All right. Well, good morning, those of you who are with us, and I think we'll probably have some folks pilot in over the next couple of minutes. But I just wanted to say good morning and thank you for joining us for our ED coffee chat this morning. This is something a little bit different. Hopefully, you still have your coffee, even though we're not together in person. We've done one of these already before that was in person at our location in Lafayette, and we wanted to just provide an opportunity. To do a virtual one in case, for wherever you are in the world, you can come and kind of learn a little bit about what's going on at Cold Creek Meals on Wheels. And specifically, we're going to do a little bit of looking back. We're going to talk about 2024 and just share some of our data from 2024, share some of our successes, some of our challenges. But then we will talk about 2025 and kind of what we are anticipating and what we see on the horizon and just kind of talk more. And then we'll have an opportunity at the end for folks to ask any questions that they may have. I do have a couple of my staff members on the call though, so I'm going to allow Brittany and Luna to introduce themselves before we get started, and then we'll get going. So whoever wants to go first, you two.
Hi, I'm Luna. I am our community engagement manager. Yeah, excited to be here. And if you have any questions about upcoming events, things like that, go ahead and ask me those.
And I'm Brittany Vital. I'm the Director of Philanthropy at Cold Creek Meals on Wheels, a main point of contact for anything fundraising related. And throughout this presentation, feel free to throw any questions you have in the chat. I will be monitoring that. We'll have some time at the end to answer questions, but we can also stop Nate if it's relevant to what he is talking about. So go ahead and throw those in the chat and I will keep an eye on those.
Thanks, Brittany and Luna. And feel free, like Brittany said, to interrupt anytime. Small enough group, would love for this to be an engaging conversation, and I'm just really grateful for you to be here. So with that, let's dive in. So I'm not going to read a quote that I just said, but you can read it, or that I said, but you can read it there if you want to. When I think about 2024, I started in May of 2024, and so I get to say I'm new for about another 2 months, and so I'm kind of a little sad to lose that title because it gets you out of a lot of things, but I'm also very excited to hit my 1 year mark. And ironically, I will not be here at my 1 year mark because we'll be having our second baby. So we'll have to celebrate that somewhere else. But when I think about 2024, I think a lot about growth and I think a lot about resilience. And when I say resilience, I think about resilience of our team. I think about resilience of our volunteers and any of our stakeholders. I think about resilience of our partners. But I really think about resilience of the folks that we serve, our neighbors in our communities, because our folks have been through a lot over the past 5 years through the pandemic and the Marshall Fire, from SNAP benefits coming to an end, which had a real impact on our folks. We're going to talk more about that later. I think that 2024 was really a year where we came together to reach our community, and I'm really proud of that, and I'm really proud of the work that we did there. So just want to call that out, but I also want to call out that we wouldn't be able to do the work that we did in 2024 or that we've done since our existence in 1972 if it wasn't for the volunteers that support our work and the donors that support our work. Our organization, as you all know, there's some volunteers on this call and we're grateful for you. Our organization is fueled by our volunteers and by the work that they do. And so we're just so incredibly grateful for them. And want to call that out whenever we have the option. So thanks to those of you who are on the call, and thanks to anybody who's been a part of supporting us in any way in 2024. It was really impactful. So here's just some of the numbers, and I'm not going to call all of these out, but anybody on my team can tell you that I am a data nerd, and I think that numbers are really important to talk about what we do. There are a few things that I want to call out. One is that number there at the top. So 92% of our clients can't afford the full cost of meals, and so the meal that we provide, and that number has gone up pretty significantly over the past few years. A little bit about our model, if you're not familiar at Cold Creek Meals on Wheels. So we do have a sliding scale for folks who are in need of our services, but we don't turn anybody away. And so folks who are able to contribute, we do ask them to contribute. The full cost of a meal right now for us is $7. But as you see there, 92% of our clients aren't able to contribute that, and we're able to provide them a meal anyway. That number we expect will grow even more. We can't get too much bigger than that, but we do expect that it will grow even more this year, especially if we see cuts in Medicaid and SNAP benefits. We do expect that number to go even higher. So I think that's a really important number to call out. That 86 cents is our average contribution per meal. So again, of that 92% that can't afford the full cost of their meal, the majority of those folks are paying 86 to contribute to a meal. And that's a $7 cost per meal. So that's why our partners are so important, right? That's why our donors are so important, because they help us bridge that gap between what our neighbors are able to contribute for their meal and what we have to put in so that we're able to feed those folks. And so we're really grateful for that partnership, and we will continue to be. Again, last number I want to call out on here is just those volunteer hours, right? Over 14,000 volunteer hours it took to do the work that we do. And so we're so incredibly grateful for that. You can see some of the work of the volunteers happening on these pictures here. And so we just, again, so incredibly grateful for that, and wouldn't be able to do that wouldn't be able to do that without you. So really appreciate that, and grateful for the work that everyone does. Yeah, so we're going to let's talk about number of meals served, really not just the last couple of years, but since 2017. So as you can see, as a reminder, Coal Creek Meals on Wheels serves Erie, Superior, Louisville, and Lafayette. We do have the majority of our clients, about 57% of those are in Lafayette, but Louisville and Superior and Erie are definitely growing communities as well. So we see that. We see those numbers growing, but as you can see, from 2017 to about 2022, our numbers were pretty stagnant, with a little bit of a blip in 2020, but for obvious reasons. But for the most part, we stayed pretty stagnant and pretty consistent. And then in 2023, as you can see, something crazy happened. And best we can tell, what happened in 2023 was in 2020, SNAP benefits were extended from due to COVID, which really allowed folks to have extended access to food in a variety of ways, whether that was access to what is more commonly known as food stamps, or just access to other services. That in large part was government funded. That ended in March of 2023, and we saw a very dramatic and unprecedented spike when that happened. And then you can see we continue to grow in 2024, and we're on pace to serve over 85,000 meals in 2025. So we do expect that increase to continue. And food insecurity nationwide is at an unprecedented high, the highest we've seen in years. And we don't expect that to be any different for the older adults that we serve. And we serve anyone, but the majority of our clientele are older adults. And so we don't expect that to be any different. Again, we are expecting some cut in Medicaid and SNAP benefits again. So it'll be interesting to see what that does to our demand. To date, we have never turned away anyone for a meal. So those 72,000 meals that you see there that we served in 2024, that was us being able to serve everyone who inquired and who told us that they needed help feeding themselves or feeding their family. And we're really proud that we've never had to turn anyone away. However, as our demand continues to grow, it's a conversation that we're going to have to potentially start having if our demand doesn't go down. So just something that we're aware of. We don't want to do that, and that's where it'll be really important for partners to continue to step up and support our work so that we're able to provide anyone a meal who needs one. Yeah, we talked about this a little bit at the onset, but I just want to kind of draw attention to this again. So this is our no contributions percentage. And what that means is this is the percentage of folks who are unable to contribute anything monetary towards their meals. In 2021, that was just 10% of the clients that we served. And now in 2024, that number was 55%. And actually in the first couple months of 2025, it's gone up again. So we continue to, and that's an 84% growth rate from 2021 to 2024. So we continue to see that number increasing, and we anticipate that will continue to go up. Right now, our average cost of a meal is somewhere between $6 and $8, depending on what food cost is. As food cost continues to rise, as inflation continues to rise, inflation is down a little bit right now, but as food cost continues to rise, we do anticipate, obviously, that our costs will go up. and the average contribution for a meal will continue to go down. And so again, we'll rely heavily on our partners to help us fill that gap so we don't have to turn anyone away. Yeah, I think this is some really interesting data that is important to talk about when we think about 2024. And that is just the age of our clients by percentage, right? So again, as you think back to the chart we showed earlier, we've seen a pretty steady or a pretty dramatic increase in meals served, specifically in 2023. But even prior to that, when the number was pretty stagnant, in 2021, we were serving 81% of our clients were 65 and older. Now that number has gone down dramatically, and that number is now 64%. Obviously, that's still the majority of our clients, and so we don't anticipate that majority ever changing. However, it does tell us a couple things that in my world are important to keep track of. One, more folks are in need of our services at a younger age than they were before, which indicates to me that they're going to need our services for longer, and it just indicates the alarming situation that we are in our community with food insecurity, regardless of age. Meals on Wheels is interesting because we have no affiliation to National Meals on Wheels other than our name. We don't pay a franchise fee. We pay a membership fee to be a part of Meals on Wheels. And for that membership fee, we essentially get access to some grant opportunities and to some educational opportunities. But Meals on Wheels National is essentially an advocacy organization that works to fight hunger, insecurity, and aging adults. But we don't get any funding from them unless we apply for it. And last year that funding was very limited. And so we do not have to only serve aging adults. And to this point, we have chosen not to do that, which is a fantastic situation to be in right now because we were able to serve that 13% of our clientele that were under the age of 19. We have seen our family numbers go up, our single family numbers go up especially. So that's just something to keep an eye on. Again, as these numbers continue to grow, we'll have to have some conversation. We might have to have some conversations around narrowing our scope or thinking really critically about how we serve everyone. We're all pretty aligned that we hope we never have to turn anyone away, and we will continue to govern with that philosophy in mind. However, with food insecurity remaining on the rise, there will be some interesting conversations that probably have to happen over the next couple of years. Yeah, I think it's important to be really transparent about our sources of income and where does our revenue come from at Coal Creek Meals on Wheels. So about 44% are donations. So those are our partnerships that we really value. Those are foundations, those are individuals that we really, that 44% is actually just individuals. So that is amazing. And that speaks so much to the community that we serve. I will say, just in my experience, 44% is a pretty high number for individual donations as far as being a percentage of your revenue, which speaks so incredibly highly, not only to the work that Brittany and Luna are doing and the relationships they're building, but also just to the support that we get in this community and that the understanding that folks have that the work we're doing is really important and that they choose to support us in that way. So we're so incredibly grateful for that support. 2% of our revenue comes from events. Hopefully you'll be joining us for Meals on Heels in a couple of weeks. We'd love to see anybody there. Tickets are still available, but going fast. So we hope you get some, you get them soon. And we hope that we can bring up that 2% number. So we challenge anyone to come and support us so we can bring up that 2% number. 11% is our corporate support. The majority of support we get are from local corporations, and we're grateful for their support. 10% are those program service fees that we talked about. So clients who are able to contribute something for their meals, that comes from that 10%. And then 33% of our funding comes from grants and foundations, from grants from foundations, which is really helpful. One thing that I want to point out that is important for me as a nonprofit leader when I look at this breakdown is that 44% and that 3% or that 33%. I like that that's pretty even. Obviously, we would like them to be a little bit more even, but I like that that's pretty even because it tells us that we're not heavily relying on one source of income too much to be able to continue the work that we're doing. So we would love for corporate support to continue to increase, and that's a goal of ours. But we're pretty happy with the numbers that we are for those 44% and that 33%. And again, I can't thank folks enough who are part of that 44%. We couldn't do this work without you. All right. So as you can imagine, it's been an interesting few months in the world of Meals on Wheels, both nationally and locally. Had some conversations. We got a lot of questions about the federal funding freeze that was threatened and then not threatened and then threatened again. And I can't remember where we are today. But we have a lot of questions. We've gotten a lot of questions about that over the past few months, and really folks reaching out concerned. And so we're extremely grateful for that. And so let's talk a little bit about that. And then we can also talk a little bit about the tariffs impact as well. So as far as federal funding goes, and stay with me, it's a bit complicated. Coal Creek Meals on Wheels does not directly receive federal funding. Many Meals on Wheels organizations do. Our sister organization in Loveland, our sister organization in Fort Collins do receive federal funding. The reason that we do not, and we haven't historically, there's a couple really important reasons that we do not. One is we talked about being able to serve anyone earlier. Federal funding that many Meals on Wheels get does immediately stamp a age requirement on the folks that you serve. So the funding that comes from the feds essentially says you are only able to serve, I think it's 60 or 65 and up with this funding. And so it makes funding a lot more complicated. There are also a lot of regulations around food quantity and nutrition requirements. And we think that the nutritional element of our food is fantastic, but there's a lot of oversight involved, and it would limit the amount of folks that we are able to serve. So historically, that's been the reason that Coal Creek Meals on Wheels has never gone after federal funding. And this year, I feel very fortunate that decision was made by leadership prior to me, because some organizations that I know of rely very heavily on federal funding, some Meals on Wheels organizations, to the tune of up to 40% of their budget. And those organizations are a little more stressed than I am at this moment. But with that being said, we rely indirectly on federal funding in a lot of ways. One of those being the building that we operate out of, where our kitchen is a Boulder County Housing Authority building. And Boulder County Housing Authority is funded in large part by Housing and Urban Development, which is a federal organization. And so that's one of the bigger trickle downs that we worry about when it comes to federal funding. Another one that I think could potentially be a challenge is when we think about, again, if we see an impending cut to SNAP, if we see an impending cut, or if we see a cut to Medicaid, Medicare, we know that our clients rely heavily on things like Medicare, Medicaid, and SNAP to go about their daily lives and to live independently and comfortably. And so any sort of cut to those programs could have a drastic increase in the folks who need our services. And then tariffs go along with that, right? We know that there's two things that could be greatly impacted by tariffs. And those are two things that we rely heavily on. One, of course, is fuel. Our volunteers pick up the fuel cost from the vehicles when they deliver. And of course, the other one, the most obvious one, is food costs. We've already started to see an uptick in food costs this year, and we anticipate that to continue. And again, we kind of have two challenges that are happening at the same time. One is tariffs could be impacting the neighbors that we serve and impeding their ability to get a meal, but it also impacts our ability to feed those folks because we're paying those same food costs. And so we kind of are experiencing the same challenge that they are in some ways. And so we have to think really critically around how we're able to support those folks. I will pause because this has been a heavy topic. And so I will pause to see if there's any questions here, specifically while it's top of mind before we move forward. Great.
But well, this is Christine. Oh, this is Keenan. Sorry, I'm on my work phone.
Keenan. Go ahead, Keenan.
Oh, hello. Hi. So again, I think when you're referencing Meals on Wheels, you mean Coal Creek Meals on Wheels specifically each time. And if that's what you're referring to, the federal funding and freezing wouldn't necessarily impact Coal Creek Meals on Wheels based on what you had said earlier, correct? Other
Correct.
than it'll raise food prices, and outside of that, Coal Creek Meals on Wheels would not be impacted by that.
Correct, not directly. Yes, great clarifying question.
Thank you so much.
Thanks, Keenan.
Oh yeah, no problem. I wanted to clarify for myself too, so thank you.
Yeah. All right. So we've had some changes in 2024, and we're excited to talk about what those changes have been. The first one and the biggest one is that we have a second office. So those of you who are familiar with our work know that our kitchen operates out of Josephine Commons, which is on Burlington, just off baseline there. And that is where our kitchen staff and our kitchen continues to operate. That is where deliveries go out of. But we outgrew that space from an office and a storage space perspective. And so we had to take on some additional office space. And so we did that. We are now in Lafayette Commons, which is on East Simpson in downtown Lafayette. It's about 3 minutes a drive away from our kitchen and about a 10-minute walk. And so on a nice day, we walk over. And that houses myself, both Luna and Brittany, who are on this call, and then our executive support coordinator, as well as our senior manager of programs, kind of splits her time between the two locations. Our kitchen team and our volunteer engagement specialists remain at Josephine Commons to really support the day-to-day work that happens there. And that is still where our operations happen. And so certainly not an ideal situation. We would love to be one big happy family under one roof, but that is not the way our circumstance currently allows us. And so we certainly have gone through an adjustment to make this happen, but I think that it's going really smoothly, and we're really proud of the work. I'm really proud of the work that our staff has done to make this happen, because certainly there are some challenges that come along with it. What I will say is, obviously, this was an investment that we had to make, and we really felt like it was an investment in two things. One, first and foremost, it was an investment in our people. I'm a big believer that if our staff has the support that they need, then they are able to serve more people in a more impactful way. And so I do believe that there's a trickle down there. And then the second one is, it was an investment in the clients that we serve, because we're able to serve more people with the money that we do save in things like bulk ordering and things like that. And so I think it's going to come out in the wash, but certainly it is an additional asset that we've had to take on this year. Yeah, so we always want to talk about success stories, right? I think it's really important to talk about the work that we do and how it impacts folks. And so I want to just take a minute to introduce you to Terry, and you can see the impact that we've had on Terry. I think that when we think about Meals on Wheels, and please take a minute to get to know Barbara and Faye as well. When we think about Meals on Wheels, one thing that is sometimes overlooked is the impact that our work has. Not only, I'd say that we really use food as a vehicle to deliver social connection. And I think that's a really critical part of what we do. Many of the folks that we serve live alone and are living in conditions that they're only able to live in because they have someone who checks on them 5 days a week. And so I think that's really important to be aware of. And then in addition, I think one of our lesser known programs is our Project Homecoming program. So Project Homecoming provides 5 free meals to anyone once they get out of the hospital for whatever reason. So whether that's they had a surgery or some sort of procedure, or we're seeing an uptick in folks who just had a baby, things like that. We're able to provide those folks with meals for 5 days free of charge, because it can be really challenging when you come out of the hospital. And so we're really grateful for the support to be able to continue offering that great service to our community. Extremely popular is our Plates for Pets program. So we don't just deliver to humans, we deliver to pets once a month. Folks who are unable to provide food and nutrients for their pets, we deliver that to them, just like we do to other folks. And this is a relatively new program for us, and we're so incredibly grateful for it. As a dog lover myself, this is something that I love about the work that we do. This is also something that we've been able to grow because of the additional office space, because we are running out of places to put pet food. And so having an office space really frees up storage for all the pet food that we're acquiring. And we're grateful for our partners such as the Colorado Pet Pantry, the Boulder Humane Society, a few others who really work with us to make that program happen. All right. Hopefully we have some questions or just anything that you want to talk about. We're really grateful for everyone on this call and would love to allow an opportunity to hear from you and answer any questions you may have.
Hey, this is Jeff.
Oh, go
I have
ahead.
a quick question.
Hi,
Is that
Jeff.
okay? Hey, so I appreciate all the data you shared with us and all the metrics is extremely informative. And I like the pie chart that you showed about where your incoming funds are coming from. Do you have something similar to that shows where the money goes to? Like what percent goes to meals, what percent goes to, like, I guess, the Josephine Commons operation, what percent goes to your office space, what percent goes to the pets? Do you have anything like that you can share?
Yes, I don't have it readily available, but I have most of those numbers close in my head. So as long as you don't 100% check my work, I can give you my best guess. Our office space, this office space is very limited. It's about 2% of our budget. About 55% of our budget is direct, is cost of goods, direct food, right? So not only food, but then our personnel in our kitchen staff, their benefits, things like that. That's 55, close to 60%. And then the rest of that is operations, which includes our personnel.
Thanks.
This is Keenan. Thank you, Nate and Brittany and Luna. It's always a delight to see you. I too had that question as well that Jeff just mentioned, but more importantly, with that second location, how does that fit in with your current budget that I presume it's budgeted for 2025, and that you that it was something that was looked at in 2024, but is there a budget deficit due to the new location, or an expected budget deficit?
So Coal Creek Meals on Wheels, we are pulling from our reserves this year. So it's a deficit in that way. However, we have the funds in our reserves. So we're pulling from our reserves this year. We've been pulling from our reserves for the last 2 years. And so we're not in a deficit because of the office space. Our office space, like I said, is about 2% of our budget. And we were able to forego some costs this year because of the addition of office space. One of the bigger ones is we had an offsite storage unit that we were utilizing last year. We have closed that storage space and we're able to store everything in-house. So obviously wasn't a wash, but that supported our work. And then we also are able to save money. And one big example is the containers that we utilize to store our food for delivery. Those are much cheaper the more you order. And so we were able to really increase our delivery, our output of those, we were able to order more of those because of the additional storage space, which is a savings as well. So certainly not quite a net zero, but it doesn't have a huge impact on our budget. And the deficit that we're facing is not in relation to our office space.
Okay. And so for 2025, that cost of a meal isn't expected to go up too much, given that
the cost that the client cost or our cost?
Coal Creek Meals on Wheels cost.
It's not expected to go up from an operational standpoint.
Okay.
Yeah, it'll certainly go up because of food costs and rising, just food costs. Yeah.
Right. And then I just have one more question. I was late and I missed maybe the slide 1 or 2. So sorry if this is in the slide deck. But so what are the challenges for 2025 and what are the goals for 2025 for Coal Creek Meals on Wheels? Is it looking for more funding? Is it looking for more clients? Is it looking more for volunteers? Like, is it looking for more outreach? It's probably all of them, but there's only so many you can focus on.
Yes.
In any given year.
To what you just said.
Pardon?
My answer is yes. It's all of those.
Okay, got it. Okay, great, perfect. I added them all.
When nonprofits say, yes, I need more funding, I think it's a little bit of a cop-out because we're always going to need more funding. So I can go a little bit deeper than that. I think that for me, there's 2 really big challenges. One is the office space. It's not a financial challenge that keeps me up at night, but certainly having a divided staff is not my favorite thing in the world. And so the impact that that has on operations has been very seamless, and it certainly, I don't want to say it hasn't been noticeable. It has, but we've done our best with that. But it's, as a leader, it's a challenge because I would love for all of our people to be under one roof, because I think that that would have the biggest impact on, that would be the most seamless, right? So that's a challenge that we're going to spend all of 2025 really thinking through. I think our other challenge is kind of a challenge that I'm anticipating, and I don't know for sure it's going to happen, but I feel like it is, and that is a huge rise in our demand due to a cut in SNAP or a cut in Medicaid. That's a challenge that I worry a lot about, and I think that we're going to have to be really intentional around how we respond. And I don't think we're alone in that. I think nonprofits in all over the country, not just in our community, are having that same conversation with their teams, is what are we going to do to respond to this? Because like I said, when food costs go up or when benefits are cut, we are hurt by that just like our neighbors are, but they're still turning to us for support. So we have to really be intentional about what that looks like. I hope that answered your question, Keenan.
Hi, Nate. I have a question for you.
Absolutely.
You mentioned that you're a data person, right up my alley. And you kind of just mentioned one of the things I was going to ask about. I know that the organizations plan budgets months in advance. So your 2025 budget was already planned. But now you've got and you mentioned the federal funding freeze, tariffs. Your costs go up to buy the food. Fewer people are able to pay for the meals. Plus, you just mentioned more people could be turning. Are you already now, we're almost 3 months, first quarter done with the year. Are you looking at the annual budget and rejiggering some of the numbers? Or are you sticking with the original budget that you created?
Yes, there's certainly some moving around that's going to happen. I don't anticipate our deficit growing. I don't anticipate our revenue. I have not yet changed any revenue anticipation or my anticipated revenue, but certainly there's been some moving around, and there will continue to be some moving around because I anticipate we budgeted in a pretty good buffer for food costs, and so we feel okay right now. But yeah, certainly there will be some moving around that will continue to happen throughout the year. Great question.
Just to follow up to that, do you have any, because I know I saw the chart of the growth in the number of people who need. Are you able to go into past numbers and see what the potential growth is for a number of people who will need meals? Because you said you are pretty sure it's going to rise. Do you have any historical data that you can look back on and use that?
Well, what's interesting about our historical data, just as Coal Creek Meals on Wheels, is that, like I showed, it's pretty stagnant for 3 years from the years up until 2023. So a bit we're kind of building that plane as we fly it. But what I will say is the Boulder County does a pretty good job with census data, and census data can tell us a lot around what we anticipate poverty rates to be, what we anticipate aging America, like the percentage of folks who are going to be aging. Boulder County is one of the fastest aging populations in the state of Colorado. And so we anticipate that folks are going to need, regardless of SNAP or Medicaid, even if that all stayed flat, we anticipate, just because of the aging data here, that our numbers will go up about 25% over the next few years without even bringing into consideration SNAP and things like that. Aging data is the best, and census data is the best data we have access to really help us project sort of where we're going, because from a historical standpoint, we're kind of in uncharted territory. Does that answer your question? Yeah, great. Keenan,
Yes,
I see your hand.
perfect. Thanks so much.
Yeah.
Yeah, so to add to what Ephraim had stated, I presume you collaborate with Boulder Meals on Wheels and other Meals on Wheels, so it's not like you're working in isolation. But do you talk to Boulder County and also St. Vrain and other counties that have Meals on Wheels?
Absolutely. We have a great relationship with other Meals on Wheels organizations, but more specifically, I think we have a great relationship with other organizations in our community. I mean, the challenge with Boulder Meals on Wheels or like Loveland Meals on Wheels or Longmont is it's great to have conversations and to share ideas, right? And to really have that thought partnership, but they're serving their area, I'm serving our area. So it's a little bit different in that way. But I have a monthly standing meeting with leaders, with nonprofit leaders from places like Sister Carmen, Clinica, Community Food Share, Longmont Safe House, just to name a few, the Boulder Bridge House. So we are all getting together monthly to really have conversations, because we can't do this alone, and we will have to think really critically around duplication, right? We don't want to do the same thing someone else is doing. If someone else is doing something and they have the infrastructure to do it really well, we're letting them do it, right? And so just having those conversations really well, but also understanding that we're going to have to really work together and think critically around ensuring that duplication isn't taking place, because we're all going after the same funding, right? And so if we're doing something that's similar to what they're doing, we don't want to live in that world. But also knowing that we can't serve everyone alone, they can't serve everyone alone. And so how do we do this together? Those conversations, I think, are going to be I think they've always been critical, but I think they're going to be even more critical as we kind of go into this uncharted territory that I think we're heading into.
Thank you.
Great questions. Anything else I can answer for folks? Okay, well, we will stay on for a minute. If you want to answer questions, if you have more questions, we'll keep the Zoom open for a minute. But thank you all so much. We didn't really know how this was going to go, and we've never done it before this way. So we're really grateful that you took the time out of your day to join us. And hopefully you can grab some more coffee, and we'll have a great rest of your day. Thanks, y'all.